Emma had been dreaming about this day for years. Her first home, her sanctuary, a place she could call her own without compromise or interruptions. She had saved every extra penny, skipped vacations, and worked overtime shifts until her hands ached, all for this moment. Today was supposed to be her celebration, her housewarming party, a mark of independence, a statement that she had made it. She imagined laughter filling her living room, friends and family admiring the space she had painstakingly decorated, the smell of fresh flowers mingling with the aroma of catered food. She imagined herself at the center of it all, glowing with pride and happiness. She had spent over $4,000 on this party, a sum that made her heart pound every time she remembered the bills she had paid. It wasn't just money, it was a declaration of her hard work and determination. She had gone through countless online stores and local boutiques for decorations, chosen a theme she loved, and even hired a small band to play live music in the backyard. Every detail had been carefully considered. She had thought about seating, arrangements, lighting, and a menu that would impress. She had imagined every guest leaving with a smile, feeling the warmth of her home and the joy of her accomplishment. She thought of the social media posts, the little videos she would take to remember the night. This housewarming wasn't just a party. It was a milestone, proof that she could create something entirely hers. The morning of the party, she woke up early, buzzing with excitement. She ran through the checklist she had written weeks ago. The caterers were scheduled to arrive at noon, the band at 3, and the friends were expected in the early evening. She double-checked the decorations. Pastel balloons tied to chairs, elegant string lights across the patio, table arrangements that matched her carefully chosen color scheme. She even set up a photo corner with a backdrop she had designed herself. Every element was perfect, or so she thought. Emma was midway through adjusting the table settings when she heard voices outside. She assumed it was the caterers arriving, so she smiled and prepared to greet them. But as she opened the front door, the scene that greeted her made her heart stop, her breath catch, and her vision blur with disbelief. Pink banners hung across the living room, with giant letters spelling, "Welcome, baby girl." Baby-shaped balloons floated in the corners, and pastel ribbons adorned every corner of her home. Her meticulously planned tables were covered with small gift bags and baby-themed centerpieces. A cake sat in the center, decorated with tiny baby figurines. Surrounded by wrapped gifts for a child she didn't even have. Emma froze. Her mind tried to make sense of it. Maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe someone misunderstood. But as she walked further in, she saw her mother standing near the center of the room, her face radiant, eyes shining with pride. Her mother's smile stretched wide as she noticed Emma, as if she were welcoming her to a surprise she had orchestrated perfectly. "Isn't it beautiful?" her mother said, her voice filled with genuine satisfaction. "Your sister deserves a special baby shower, and since you already decorated for your party, it seemed like the perfect opportunity." "Everyone's already arriving." Emma blinked. She searched her mother's face, expecting to see a flicker of uncertainty, hesitation, or regret. But there was nothing, only conviction. Her mother was proud of herself. She believed she had done the right thing. She genuinely thought this was thoughtful, generous, even clever. Then came Lily, her younger sister, glowing with excitement, holding a small gift bag in her hands. "Oh my gosh, Em, this is amazing. Thank you for doing this for me," Lily said, hugging her tightly. The words were meant to be loving, appreciative, and innocent, but to Emma they cut deep. Emma's carefully planned celebration, the culmination of months of hard work, sleepless nights, and financial sacrifice, had been taken from her, and given to her sister as if it had always been meant for Lily. Her party had been hijacked, erased, replaced. For a moment she couldn't move. Her arms hung limply at her sides, her body frozen in shock. The room buzzed with the sound of arriving guests, their laughter and chatter filling the space she had intended to call her own. Every detail she had spent hours perfecting was now part of someone else's event. Every element, every flower, every ribbon, every carefully placed balloon had been absorbed into this baby shower, and she was left feeling invisible, irrelevant. Emma felt a sudden surge of disbelief and anger. How could her mother do this? How could her mother assume she would be okay with losing her own celebration without even asking? She could see the justifications forming in her mother's mind. It's for Lily. It's convenient. Everyone will understand. But Emma didn't care about excuses. She cared about herself, about the betrayal she felt in that moment. She remembered all the times her mother had made decisions on her behalf, deciding what was best for her, choosing what mattered and dismissing her opinions. Emma had always tried to accommodate, to maintain harmony, to let her family take center stage while she worked quietly in the background. She had tolerated being overshadowed, overlooked, and dismissed countless times before. This was different. This was deliberate. Emma's mind raced, a storm of emotions crashing through her. She felt small, invisible, humiliated, but also, beneath it all, a spark of something darker, a desire for recognition, for justice, for payback. It started as a quiet thought, barely perceptible, but it grew rapidly, fueled by the sting of betrayal. She imagined telling her mother how wrong this was, that the words seemed inadequate. She imagined confronting Lily, but even her sister's innocence couldn't erase the fact that she had benefited from Emma's hard work. She felt the pulse of anger rise in her chest, a steady drumbeat of resolve. Something had shifted. The housewarming party was gone, replaced by a celebration that wasn't hers, but the fire it ignited inside her couldn't be extinguished. Emma realized she had two choices: collapse under the weight of disappointment, pretend it didn't matter, or rise, reclaim her power, and find a way to make them understand the magnitude of their betrayal. As she stood in her transformed living room, watching her mother direct guests and Lily beam with excitement, Emma felt the spark grow. It wasn't revenge yet, not the kind that destroyed others, but it was the seed of self-assertion, of refusing to be erased. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, to contain the mix of grief, fury, and humiliation swirling inside. Her hands tightened into fists, then relaxed as she reminded herself that she would not let this define her. Every detail of the party flashed through her mind: the flowers, the tablecloths, the music, the guest list, and for each one she made a mental note. This was hers, even if they had stolen the celebration. They couldn't take her memories, her effort, or the story of how she had achieved this milestone. They had taken the moment, but they had not taken her dignity, her perseverance, or the years of struggle that led her to this home. Emma felt a quiet determination begin to take root. This moment of betrayal would not be the end of her. It would be the beginning of something else, an awakening of self-respect, boundaries, and the understanding that she deserved to be seen and honored. The seed of revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about reclamation, about finding a way to assert herself in a family that had often overlooked her. By the time she finally stepped away from the crowd, her emotions still raw but more focused, Emma knew one thing with absolute clarity. This was not over. The housewarming might have been stolen, but the fire inside her had been ignited. She would find a way to make them recognize her worth, not through anger alone, but through action, through standing firm, and through refusing to be invisible again. And with that, the first flicker of her plan began to form. After the housewarming disaster, Emma's life became a storm of conflicting emotions. The initial shock of betrayal had faded, replaced by a simmering anger that refused to subside. Every time she walked through her home, she remembered the pink banners, the baby balloons, the guests' laughter that had drowned out her celebration. Her home, her sanctuary, had been taken from her, and though the party was over, the memory remained vivid, sharp, and stinging. She replayed it endlessly in her mind, each repetition fueling a quiet but relentless determination to reclaim her power. Emma tried to carry on with her daily life, but even routine tasks felt tainted. Cooking dinner, paying bills, answering work emails, everything reminded her that she had been wronged. Friends asked how the party went, and she could barely respond. Her voice caught every time she tried to explain, because no words could capture the depth of humiliation she felt. She had been the architect of her own celebration, only to watch it vanish in front of her eyes. At first, she thought confrontation might help. She approached her mother one evening, hoping to express the hurt that still lingered. "Mum," she said, her voice steady but firm, "I need to talk about what happened with my party. I didn't just lose a celebration. I felt invisible." Her mother's face tightened, her expression oscillating between guilt and defensiveness. "Emma, it was just a party. Lily is having a baby. I thought it would be easier if we combined everything. Don't overreact." Emma felt her blood pressure rise. Overreact? I spent months planning that party. It was supposed to celebrate my hard work, my independence, my home. It wasn't about Lily. Her mother's eyes flicked away. "You'll understand when you're older. Family comes first. We didn't mean to hurt you." But Emma did not feel understood. She felt dismissed, belittled, minimized. Her mother's words, though polite, carried an undercurrent of judgment. She had always been expected to bend, to compromise, to make herself small so others could shine. She had done it for years, and now, in her own home, she was confronted with the same pattern. Emma realized that confrontation alone would not suffice. Her anger had transformed into a quiet, strategic resolve. She wanted them to understand the magnitude of the wrong done to her. She wanted them to recognize the weight of their decisions, the impact of their thoughtlessness. But she did not want to hurt anyone. She wanted clarity, acknowledgement, and a shift in the way her family treated her. She began by withdrawing, deliberately creating distance. She stopped volunteering to host small family gatherings, stopped running errands for her mother, stopped rearranging her schedule to accommodate Lily's needs. Every refusal felt like a small act of rebellion, a reclaiming of agency. It was subtle, almost invisible, but each act reinforced her boundaries. Emma's friends noticed the change immediately. "You're different," one said. "You're calmer but also stronger." She nodded but didn't explain. She was learning a crucial lesson. Strength wasn't loud or aggressive. Strength was knowing when to say no, when to stop bending, when to put herself first without guilt. Her mother, predictably, noticed too. "Emma, why are you so distant?" she asked one evening, her voice laced with genuine concern and irritation. "Lily feels like you're upset with her." Emma met her gaze directly. "I am upset," she said. "Not just with Lily, but with you. You crossed a line. You didn't just take my party, you dismissed me, erased my effort, and acted as if it didn't matter. That hurt." Her mother shook her head, unwilling to fully grasp the depth of Emma's feelings. "It was one party, Emma. Stop making this so dramatic. Lily is your sister. She has needs too." Emma's chest tightened. That was the problem. To them, it was one party. To Emma, it was the culmination of months of sacrifice, the tangible proof of her independence, and now it was gone. Every guest's laugh, every decoration, every flower arrangement stolen for someone else's celebration was a silent accusation that her existence, her effort, and her joy were secondary. Emma realized revenge wouldn't be about loud confrontation or emotional outbursts. It would be deliberate, controlled, and strategic. She didn't need to ruin their celebrations or humiliate them publicly. She needed to assert herself in a way that could not be ignored, a way that forced them to recognize her worth. She decided to reclaim her power through inaction. She would no longer be the family's default organizer, the one who hosted events because she had the space or the time. She would no longer accommodate their expectations at the cost of her own peace. She would stand firm, even if it created tension. Emma began by declining small requests. A family lunch here, a birthday gathering there, she politely refused. Each refusal was met with surprise, disbelief, and subtle guilt-tripping. But she held her ground. The first few times, she felt pangs of doubt. Was she being harsh? Was this overreaction? But then she remembered the pink banners, the stolen celebration, the laughter that wasn't hers. Each memory reinforced her resolve. Her withdrawal had an unexpected effect. It forced her family to notice her absence. They had taken her for granted, assuming she would always be available, always willing, always accommodating. Now, when she said no, the silence was deafening. Invitations ceased, conversations paused, and the invisible thread that held the family's gatherings together began to fray. Even Lily began to feel the absence. She reached out via text, asking Emma why she seemed distant, why she no longer participated in preparations or celebrations. Emma ignored the first few messages, letting the tension build. She wanted Lily to realize, without Emma having to spell it out, the cost of taking her for granted. The tension was deliberate, but it was not cruelty. Emma's actions were calculated, measured. She wasn't punishing anyone out of spite. She was asserting boundaries she had never asserted before. Every act of refusal was a small victory, a quiet declaration that her life was hers to control, and that she would not be erased again. As days turned into weeks, Emma's confidence grew. She poured her energy into her home, her work, and her personal projects. She redecorated a corner of the living room, added new plants to the garden, and hosted small gatherings of close friends who understood and appreciated her. The contrast was stark. Family events that once felt draining now became optional, and Emma discovered the freedom that came with saying no. Yet, the desire for direct revenge still lingered, subtle and persistent. She thought about ways to make her family recognize her contributions, to make them feel the weight of their actions. She imagined scenarios where they realized, perhaps too late, what they had taken from her. She imagined a confrontation where her mother and sister would apologize, their surprise and guilt reflecting the depth of her frustration. But Emma also wrestled with her conscience. She knew revenge could easily cross into cruelty, turning her into someone she didn't want to be. She wanted acknowledgement, not destruction. She wanted respect, not humiliation. She wanted her family to see her, not to suffer. That internal struggle became a central part of her daily life. The line between self-assertion and vindictiveness blurred, and she had to constantly measure her actions against her moral compass. One night, Emma sat alone in her backyard, sipping tea under the string lights she had installed for her original party. The lights twinkled softly, reflecting off the glass doors of her home, creating a delicate glow. She thought about the party that never happened, The moment her mother took control, and the quiet fury that had sparked inside her, she realized that her initial instinct for revenge, immediate, explosive, emotional, had evolved into something more subtle, more effective. Her revenge would not be loud. It would not be dramatic. It would be quiet, deliberate, and undeniable. She would demonstrate her value not through confrontation, but through the power of her absence, the strength of her boundaries, and the unwavering assertion of her own worth. Emma knew the final step would require patience and courage. She would need to maintain this stance through pressure, guilt, and subtle manipulation from her family. She would need to withstand their attempts to draw her back into old patterns. And when the time came, she would face a choice: deliver a final, decisive act of assertion or walk away, satisfied that she had already reclaimed her power. For now, she watched the soft glow of the lights and felt a sense of control she had never experienced before. The spark of revenge had shifted from anger to empowerment, and Emma realized that she was no longer just reacting to betrayal. She was shaping her own story, determining the terms of her interactions and standing firm in a way that her family could not ignore. And in that moment, she knew the battle had only just begun. But for the first time in years, Emma felt like she held the upper hand. The weeks of quiet resistance had changed Emma in ways she hadn't fully realized. She had built a new rhythm for her life, one that no longer revolved around her family's expectations or the assumption that she would always give. She had discovered the power in saying no, the strength in holding her ground, and the clarity that came from asserting her own needs. But now, the ultimate test loomed ahead: her mother's upcoming 60th birthday. For years, Emma had been the organizer of all major family events. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, her home was the default location, and her effort, thought, and labor had always been assumed. Everyone expected her to host, to manage, to make the day special. But this time, Emma was ready to disrupt the cycle. She knew that if she said no, it would not only challenge her mother's expectations, but also force her family to confront the consequences of taking her for granted. A week before the birthday, a family group chat buzzed with messages, invitations, decorations, and questions about catering. All assumed Emma would handle it. She read each message carefully, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed to reply calmly, politely, and firmly. She wanted her message to convey her boundaries without cruelty, without apology, without hesitation. Finally, she typed, "I will not be hosting the birthday party. I won't be available for family events anymore. I hope you understand." She hit send and felt a mix of liberation and tension. Almost immediately, her phone began buzzing nonstop. Calls from her mother, texts from relatives, even messages from Lily asking why she was being distant. Their reactions were predictable: disbelief, attempts at guilt, confusion. But Emma held her ground. She did not respond to the first round of messages. She let the tension build, letting them experience the absence they had always taken for granted. Days passed. The silence was thick and heavy, but Emma didn't falter. She focused on herself, her work, her home, her friends, her hobbies. She redecorated a section of the living room, painted a wall, planted new flowers in the garden, and filled her home with the sense of pride and ownership that had been absent for so long. Each act reinforced her boundaries, each refusal to accommodate. Their expectations felt like a small victory. Then, unexpectedly, Lily arrived at her door one afternoon. Emma wasn't surprised. She had anticipated this moment. But what caught her off guard was the tone. Lily looked tired, vulnerable, even regretful. In her hands, she held a small box wrapped in soft yellow paper. "Can we talk?" Lily asked, her voice quiet and hesitant. Emma let her in without a word. They sat in the living room, surrounded by the subtle glow of string lights, the scent of fresh flowers, and the echoes of a home that had finally become Emma's own. Lily's eyes flickered toward the box. I didn't realize how much. We hurt you, she said softly. I thought you were doing the party for me, because you always helped with everything. I didn't know it was supposed to be your night. Emma listened, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering anger. It was one thing to assert herself silently. It was another to hear acknowledgement, even partial, from the person who had benefited from her loss. She had spent weeks imagining this conversation, wondering if Lily would ever understand the depth of the betrayal. Now, sitting face to face, Emma realized that acknowledgement, however imperfect, was possible. I wanted to celebrate my home, Emma said, her voice steady. Wanted one night to feel like I mattered. Lily nodded, swallowing hard. Mum shouldn't have taken over. I shouldn't have let her. I'm sorry. The words were simple, quiet, but they carried weight. Not enough to erase the pain, not enough to undo the humiliation, but enough to shift the balance. Emma realized then that revenge wasn't always about inflicting suffering. Sometimes it was about reclaiming oneself, drawing boundaries, and refusing to be invisible. The weeks of withholding, of silent assertion, had already achieved that. Her family had been forced to see her absence, to feel the consequences of their assumptions, and to confront their own behavior. She pushed aside the box Lily had brought. Inside was a framed photo of the two of them as children, holding hands, in their backyard, smiling as if nothing could come between them. Emma felt a pang of nostalgia, a bittersweet reminder of innocence and shared history. She realized that her anger had not been about the party alone. It had been about feeling unseen, unheard, and undervalued for years. The photo reminded her that there had been a time when she mattered, when her voice and presence were recognized. Without effort, Emma's internal struggle shifted in that moment. She had imagined her revenge as a climactic act of dramatic confrontation, or a calculated humiliation. But she realized that the real power lay in her choices, in her ability to control her actions rather than react impulsively. Revenge was not about spectacle. It was about empowerment, about teaching others to respect boundaries, about asserting one's worth without malice. Her mother called later that evening, her voice tentative. Emma, I understand you don't want to host the birthday. I think we all need to reflect on how we treated you. Emma felt a flicker of satisfaction, but also a deeper understanding. The satisfaction of revenge, she realized, was fleeting if it was only about hurting someone else. True satisfaction came from self-respect, from clarity, from the courage to enforce boundaries and demand recognition without compromise. In the days that followed, Emma's family slowly began to adjust. They rescheduled the birthday to a different venue, hired a caterer, and took on the planning themselves. They discovered how much they had relied on Emma's organization, attention to detail, and willingness to take responsibility. For the first time, her absence mattered. They felt the void she had left and, in doing so, began to appreciate her contributions in a way they had never done before. Emma continued her routines, maintaining her boundaries, but she also allowed room for reconciliation. She and Lily spent more time together, talking openly about their feelings, past misunderstandings and unspoken resentments. Their relationship, once strained by assumption and habit, slowly began to heal. Emma realized that the act of asserting herself, of standing firm, had opened the door to authentic connection rather than destruction. The weeks of tension had taught her another lesson. Revenge, when focused solely on hurting others, could consume the seeker. But when focused on reclaiming one's dignity, power, and autonomy, it became transformative. It forced reflection, prompted accountability, and allowed space for growth. Emma felt lighter, freer, and more centered than she had in years. She had faced the ultimate choice: to strike back in anger or to walk away with her boundaries intact. She had chosen the latter, and in doing so, she discovered the depth of her own strength. Emma's home, once the site of betrayal and loss, now felt truly hers. She had filled it with her energy, her care, her choices. The lingering sting of the stolen party had not disappeared entirely, but it had been transformed into clarity and resolve. She understood that she could never control others' actions, but she could control her responses, her boundaries, and the way she allowed herself to be treated. Even when her mother and sister returned to her home for smaller visits, the dynamic had shifted. Emma no longer felt erased or secondary. Her presence was acknowledged, her efforts respected, and her voice considered. She had learned that revenge was not about spectacle or dramatic retaliation. It was about reclaiming power and demanding recognition in the only ways that truly mattered, through self-respect and deliberate action. In the quiet evenings, when she walked through her home and admired the spaces she had shaped, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced betrayal, nurtured anger, and wrestled with the desire for revenge. She had chosen a path that honored herself rather than harmed others. And in doing so, she had discovered that the real victory lay not in punishment but in empowerment. She understood now that revenge could take many forms. It could be loud or quiet, destructive or constructive. The most satisfying form, she realized, was the one that preserved dignity, fostered awareness, and allowed for growth rather than perpetuating cycles of hurt. Emma had discovered that standing firm, asserting boundaries, and reclaiming space could achieve the justice she sought without causing unnecessary pain. As she settled into her favorite chair that evening, Emma reflected on the journey. The stolen housewarming, the simmering anger, the strategic withdrawal, all of it had led to a pivotal choice. She could have acted out in immediate retaliation, but instead she chose patience, restraint, and self-assertion. And that choice had changed everything. Her family had learned to see her, to respect her, and to appreciate the contributions they had long taken for granted. She had learned to honor herself, protect her boundaries, and recognize the true meaning of empowerment. In the end, Emma understood that revenge, when approached wisely, did not need to harm others to bring satisfaction. It was about transformation, recognition, and reclaiming one's life. And in that understanding, Emma finally felt whole.